Greetings, upstanders. Dr. O here. And so I was on the panel the night that Roland Martin responded to Charlamagne. And I remember when I first saw the video of the Charlamagne response to Roland and, the takedown and all this other type of stuff. I immediately knew that there was going to be, messages that were sent and things that were posted. Charlamagne disses Roland. How's Roland respond? Roland's gonna get back at and all, and it was just building up, throughout the day. And I was, first of all, in my mind, I'm like, anybody who knows Roland the way that they know Roland, the way that I see Roland, the way that everybody who's known him for years actually knows him, knows that he can get petty with other folks, like these Republicans, these Megan Kellys, of the world, who just say incredibly disrespectful things that target our community. But with other people in black spaces who he feels have platforms strong platforms as it relates to influencing black people, he's not interested in doing that. So I knew that wasn't gonna that night when we got on, it wasn't gonna be some takedown about Charlamagne's looks or other people on the show, or his thoughts about whether the show was stupid or all of this other. I just knew he wasn't gonna do that. I knew that whatever he was going to say was going to be constructive, and based on building the black community. But in the day, and that was the case. And in the days since, I'm seeing all of these videos from other people posting their videos, Roland versus Charlamagne, the Roland Charlamagne beef, and I just start thinking, I'm like, damn, people are posting, their thoughts. Roland Charlamagne beef, Stephen A. Smith versus Cari Champion, Stephen A. Smith versus Jasmine Crockett. Well, she's not a podcaster, or but you know what I mean. Joe Budden versus Native Land Pod, and I just and this and so it's not only what tensions might exist between these particular individuals, but it's the ecosystem, it's the echo chamber that everybody else starts having their take on this stuff. And look, and me included, I'm not saying I'm separate, for I exist separate from this stuff. Y'all hear my comments about Stephen A, and he's made comments about me and various things, and at least when I make my comments, I do my best to be constructive. With the whole Native Land Pod and Joe Budden thing, I didn't look at that as a beef. I felt like Angela Rye, who talks about, she wants to make sure that every space she's building is working on advancing black people. She recognized how some of the comments she made, about black intellectualism and Joe Budden came off wrong. And she felt like that was wrong enough to recognize. And I heard some of Joe Budden's response. I don't recall all of it, but Joe Budden is a legendary MC. If he wanted to do a quote unquote takedown, we all know that he could have done that. So I'm not saying that all of these guys are tearing each other down, or we are tearing each other down. But what I am saying is that and maybe other white podcasters do this and go at each other. Sure, fine, whatever. I don't care. Or Asian ones or Latino, and just I don't care. I'm just thinking about our community, and too much of what I'm seeing is just starting to look like hip hop beef, and it's getting frustrating, and I think that yeah, I do believe that it's fair to say that Roland Charlamagne's response to Roland was immature, and he could have just kept it to the issue of him disagreeing with Roland, saying that he was putting out misinformation. But he went out at him, went at Carr and other people on that video as well, and I think that that's problematic. I remember Stephen A. Smith's commentary about Jason Whitlock, and he could have just talked about him being unprofessional and so on and so forth, but went into the weight, went into all of that other type of stuff, and people could say, well, this is being said about him, and that they got to respond and they got to do this. It doesn't have to go like that. It doesn't have to be about that. And my hope is that we are who are in this space will figure out some type, and some of us are doing it, but more of us will be more responsible with our platforms, particularly how we publicly go after each other. I don't have all of these guys' cell phones and phone numbers and emails and so on and so forth, but I do know that all of these other guys who are in these spaces, they got each other's phone numbers. They have the ability to text. They have the ability to discuss these things. When I was watching Clay Kane's conversation with Jason Johnson, Dr. Jason Johnson, incredible conversation. Clay Kane brought up the point of commentary he made about Van Lathan, which wasn't personal, which wasn't, tearing him down. And Van Lathan was like, reached out to him and was like, yo, I like what you're doing. Let's chat about it. And they talked for live on I think Clay's show for 90 minutes. Like, we have to get into a better space with our platforms. And anybody who I put up in critique, it's about building community. If I feel like people aren't doing something positive journalistically, I'm going to talk about that. One of my biggest critiques, whenever you hear me talk about Stephen A. Smith, and the one thing I've mainly said regularly about him, I've never been in those conversations about he's a sellout and coon and all of that type of stuff. My issue has always been consistently that I don't feel like he applies the same journalistic practices he uses in sports to his conversations about politics. And that leads to a whole other Pandora's box of issues. Same critique I've had about Charlamagne has been consistent. Not talking about him personally. I've always talked about whether his platform is really moving the black community in ways that all of these guests who go on the show think that it's doing, in terms of turning them into voters and so on and so forth. That's not a personal attack against him or Jess or DJ Envy. Like, we can't turn this into a hip hop space. There's so much that we can build working together, and I've seen people criticize me for what I do in my podcast and my online space. We gotta be more constructive. We can't be out here using our platforms to tear each other down, knowing that what we say about individuals is going to get more beef, more hits, and all of that. Like, this is the first time I've talked about Stephen A. Smith probably in like a month or maybe even more. I don't build my page around him or Charlamagne, but I was out in them streets the other day and somebody yelled out, saw me, was like, keep digging into Stephen A. Smith. And then somebody in my classroom asked me, like, yo, y'all still beefing? And I'm like, you know what I mean? Like, we can't always deal with what how can I say this? We can't always control the way everybody reacts to stuff, but we can control what we do with the spaces that we occupy. And as these podcast spaces get bigger, I don't listen to, Jemele Hill as much as I would like to, because I think she's just amazing. But every time I hear her talk about stuff, I just always feel like it's constructive. I feel like she brings out journalistic facts, and she's trying to like build something. Maybe other people listen to her more than I do, have a different take, but we just, from what I hear, like we just need more of that. Is it Mark Lamont Hill versus this person and so on and so forth? Like, let Mark Lamont Hill go against Piers Morgan and do their things and fight. But it's like, we got to figure out better ways in our community to use these spaces. Yes, if we're going to critique each other, do it in ways that's constructive, do it in ways that's going to build, and not just engage in these takedowns. Like, we did that already. You know what I'm saying? When I say we did that through this hip hop space. And so I would love to know what y'all think. I know there's other podcasters out there and YouTubers that I didn't mention because I'm just not thinking about them right now. What are y'all seeing out there? If you're somebody who's not a creator, but you're in the consuming space as it relates to this, or am I off? Am I on track? Am I on target? What are your critiques about how we could all do better? Because I want to be on that list of people who are doing better. So those are my thoughts about these YouTube podcast streets, and I would just love to know what y'all think. I just feel like we all can look at ways that we can do better and just be constructive, because we're dealing with a government that's at war with us. Like, we are literally at war. You black and brown in this country, like, we're literally at war in this country. So how can Charlamagne and Roland maybe sit to have the conversation? How can Joe Budden and Tiffany Cross and Angela Rye figure out, okay, we talked that this happened, how do we build from here? Stephen A. Smith and Cari Champion or whoever, how do those things happen? Because otherwise, for the ones who are engaged in this stuff, because it doesn't matter if you're like a black podcaster and you come at it from what I feel was like an intellectual building space, like Roland did when in his response to Charlamagne. I felt that he did that. But it doesn't matter on some levels if people just automatically want to say it's beef, it's beef, it's beef, it's beef, and it's like on some levels it's not. But everybody wants to take it and make it something that it's not. And so that leads to, I feel, some of us who are in this space who might be out there doing some things that are not building the community in ways that we could, need to have a little bit of introspection as it relates to that. All right, that's all I got. Hit the like, subscribe button. Let's get to 25,000 subscribers. Get that best-selling book, Lies About Black People, How to Combat Racist Stereotypes and Why It Matters. If you can't see at the little bottom there, forward by Dr. Michael Eric Dyson. It's a good book. All right, y'all. Y'all take care. Peace.